tradition. Feel so hard. Summer rhythms playing. We're gonna thrive. Go, go, go. Oh, shout it all out. Hear the summer sun. We're a summer loving crowd. Talking Brazil ball. We're breaking it down.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talking Brazil Ball, the podcast all about Brazilian football. And I'm James. I'm your host, and I'm here with my co-host. Got confused there for a second, George. I'm here with George, as always. How are you doing today, George?
Yes, well, when you're talking about a coaster, James, I saw you just take a sip of your drink. I don't know, but I'm okay, James. Thank you. Como vai to you? It's another week close to the Brazilian season starting. I noticed, James, I suppose we'll, just touch upon this. The fixtures did come out, which just means it's just around the corner now, the season. So, yeah, excited to get into another episode. Our previewing 4 more teams today. Hopefully it'll be a good episode. I'm sure it will be. Como vai to you, James? How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, fine, thank you. So it's about a month away, isn't it, the start of the season now? It's March 30th as it kicks off, George. And like you said, there's been the fixtures have come out and you let me know that there was an enormous game to kick things off, which very much kind of rekindles the heat of last season, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's fabulous. So, James, it kicks off on Sunday, the 30th of March, a date for everybody's diaries. 30th of March. I think they're all 4 p.m. kickoffs. They all kick off at the same time. I can't remember what time, Brazilian time that is, but 4 p.m. over here in England. And massive game to kick it off with. Palmeiras host Botafogo. So Palmeiras still stinging from the title loss, I'm sure, and very, very early opportunity to put one over on Botafogo, which is, an unbelievable start to the campaign, to be quite honest with you. And whoever takes charge of Fogo, they're still without a manager, James. Whoever takes charge has an absolutely humdinger of a game to begin their reign with in Ceara with Fogo. So let's wait and see what happens with that one. James, I would say perhaps, I know I did one for the ending of the season, James. I don't know if you would, if you wanted to do this at some stage. I don't know if you'd be able to actually with it, but I might do a live watch along for the opening fixture list, like I did to the ending of it, if it's possible for me to do that. So it's an idea. If that, we'll let people know if that actually happens, but it's just an idea for now.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, I might well be available. I think I'm taking a little holiday just before then, but I know that just before the season starts, got to get it in before it kicks off. But we are back by then, so could be an idea. And like you said, a big one to get going. I did see on Botafogo them linked with Hernan Crespo. I sent to you the other day, didn't I?
Yes,
I don't know if that's anywhere advanced or advancing, but Hernan Crespo, former Sao Paulo manager. And obviously a very decorated footballer with various different European clubs, is in the running there. So that'll be interesting to see if that comes off. But like I said, George, we are here to continue before everything gets underway, our season preview. And today we're going to look at 4 more teams. We're going to look at Ceara, Corinthians, Cruzeiro, and Flamengo. So 4 more teams, 2 we have already briefly touched on, but we'll go into slightly more detail perhaps in today's show. And before we do kick that off, have you got a quiz for us today, George? I know that the Talking Brazil Ball band have been back in action this week, so they're itching to get their new hit on the airwaves. But why don't you do a bit of a quiz before they do that?
Yeah, I think they're delighted to be back, James. I had a word with them and they said, we'll come back with a good one this time. So they did. They didn't let us down this time. So we're playing that for everybody in a moment. But I do have a quiz. And it is surrounding the team that are behind you there, James. One team that we will be speaking about later on in this episode, and it's Cruzeiro. So my quiz this week surrounds Cruzeiro. So Leandro Jardim is the new manager, James, a Portuguese Venezuelan-born coach. A bit of a coup for them, I would have said, to bring him in. He's had a very decorated. Well, he's been in Europe, hasn't he? Managed in Europe, and he is, in fact, James. Obviously, he's a European, obviously Venezuelan born, but went to Portugal when he was very young. His parents are both Portuguese, so he is, for all intents and purposes, a European coach. So I want to know, James, that Cruzeiro have only had 2 other European coaches who were both Portuguese. I want to know who was the last Portuguese manager to manage Cruzeiro. A quick clue is he is managing in the league this season in Ceara.
Wow. Abel Ferreira, maybe?
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
We've already spoken about it, and this is the last clue I'll give you. We've already spoken about him in these in the last few episodes, that have come in season 2 so far.
Yeah. Ooh, I can't think who we've done already. So it must have been. It's not Flamengo. It's not Palmeiras. It's not Inter. It's not Botafogo. Ooh, I don't know. Pass.
Oh, you were close. No, you weren't really.
How can I have been close? I said pass.
Well, yeah, but you were talking about some teams, weren't you? You might have got the team right. No, it's a man who's managing a team that have just come up, James. Sport Recife's manager, Pepper or Peeper.
Oh, right, yeah. Peeper Pig. Vin Diesel.
Yes, Vin Diesel, yeah, we spoke about him, didn't we? And you made a couple of jokes about, him having to make a Fast and Furious start of the season and stuff like that. But yeah, it's him. He was manager of Cruzeiro from March 2023. He was sacked in August of 2023. Didn't have a good time there, really. They had a poor start of the season. He was subsequently sacked, and I think Cruzeiro finished the season in 15th place. So it wasn't a very 14th place. So it wasn't a very fruitful season for them. I think he had a big hand to say, a big part to play in that. So yeah, that was your quiz for this week, James. So I hope you learned something, and everybody listening did also.
Well, I certainly did. I didn't know that. So there you go. Anyway, let's get stuck in, George. And as promised, here is the Talking Brazil Ball band with their new hit. Could be called anything. I don't know what it is. They don't tend to name them, but here it goes.
Ceara, Corinthians, Cruzeiro, Flamengo. Let's see how they get on this season, Serie A.
Okay, that was the Talking Brazil Ball band to let us know just exactly who we're looking at today, George. It was a good one, wasn't it? That.
Yeah, it was a great one, that one, James. I must admit, if anybody wants to have the full 4-minute version, they can do. Just let us know, and we'll send it across to you. It's a great little catchy tune. That, to be fair.
Yeah, it might be coming on iTunes or something. Let's see. They tend to be a bit exclusive, don't they? But anyway, Ceara, George. First up, we've done Ceara already, as you mentioned. So not a new club for us in terms of that we have mentioned them before, but worth looking at them again. So yeah, it's going to be a tricky season, we think, for Ceara, don't we? Obviously, they've just come back up, a relatively big club comparatively to some of the others that we've seen come up. Leo Conde managing, having been at Vitória last season. Started off very, very poorly, unfortunately for them, and was sacked. But he's going to get another go at things with Ceara. So I think the important thing to mention on Ceara, George, is that they have lost a number of good players, really, or players who were quite key to taking them up, as we did speak on last week as well, because we covered Bahia. They did lose their top scorer from last season, Eric Pulgar, who has incidentally started pretty well at Bahia. He's kicked off very nicely in the Coppa Nordeste, which Ceara are, of course, competing in as well. So a huge blow to lose him, really. I mean, they got a decent kind of fee for him, about kind of £2 million, €3 million, something like that. But yeah, he'll undoubtedly be a big loss, and it's meant that they've had to look to the market to try and bring in some kind of Serie A proven quality, to make sure that they don't sink. Essentially, we know how difficult it can be for teams if they can't score goals. We saw that last season with the relegated sides, and we saw with Vittoria after Conde left with Alejandro, who basically, you know, without his goals, you could make a case that they would have probably gone down. So it's important to have that player who can get your goals and get your regular goals. So they have had to look to the transfer market to do a little bit of that business. And we were just speaking before we came on, weren't we, about the kind of, they look like they've made a new signing. I don't know if you were able to learn much about Pedro Raul, George, who looks like he's virtually just signed on the dotted line from Corinthians over the last day or two. He is a striker. He doesn't look like a particularly prolific striker, but he does have top division experience with Corinthians and with Vasco as well, and Goiás as well back in the day. Well, he actually scored quite a lot of goals for Goiás back in the day. So some kind of pedigree for him. He'll be probably the man tasked with leading the line, you'd have thought. Ceara, they do have other attackers who have come in who could potentially make a difference. Pedro Henrique, who you might remember from Corinthians last year, George, another one coming from Corinthians on loan. He started pretty well in the Copa del Nordeste this season. He's got a couple of goals for them already. So a couple of signings who could be promising for them, but you just don't really know with the promoted side. And as we said on the kind of the preview side of the promoted teams, it's going to take probably a bit of an effort to get them up. What do you think? To keep them up, sorry.
Yeah, I think so, James. You know, you mentioned Pedro Raul, 19 games for Corinthians last season in Serie A. He only started 4. So, like I said, he's no goals. He's not a very prolific striker, really, but he has, like I said, obviously got experience in Serie A, and he might be able to boost the goal scoring charge for Ceara this season. Like you said, they did lose a couple of very heavy, heavy influential players who were, very influential in getting them up last season. So they'd have to replace them somehow. They've obviously not got the biggest of budgets in the world in the division. So they've got to be a bit more creative. Let's see if Pedro Raul can get the goals that can, keep them away from relegation. Personally, like you said, it is difficult to know what they're going to bring. We saw it last season. I think only one of the promoted sides stayed. Sorry, 2 of them stayed up, didn't they, in the end? I think, and two of them got relegated, didn't they? So it's hard to know what's going to happen with them. But for me personally, Leo Conde's got a bit of a task on his hands, and I personally think they'll get relegated, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a goal scorer, Pedro Raul looks like a player who could do that for them. I'm just looking back at Serie A 2022 season. He was at Goiás. He was actually the second top scorer in the division. He finished as the second top scorer with 19 goals, only behind German Cano of Flu, and that kept Goiás up. They were kind of, I think, 13th in the table at the end of it. Yeah, 13th, obviously stayed up by about 10 points. And as I mentioned, those kind of goals, the likes of Alejandro getting those kinds of goals, can be the difference between staying up and not staying up. So he's got form for a side who will probably be scrapping. So it looks like a good kind of addition. And Henrique as well, you'd imagine, would be kind of in the mix. And certainly leading the line for them. But yeah, I don't think there's loads to say on Ceara, to be honest. I mean, anybody who wants to hear a little bit more about them can go back and look at the show we did 3 weeks ago about the newly promoted sides, and we covered them in a little bit more detail. Obviously, they're from Fortaleza's local rivals, share the stadium, the Castelao, with them. So that's going to add a little bit of extra spice. to the to the season. Obviously, Fortaleza, great home record last season, as we know, George. Will it be the same with their kind of neighbours, who by all accounts slightly bigger club than Fortaleza as well? Will it be quite the same for them this season? But unless you want to add anything else on Ceara, George, I think we can move on. But before we do that, obviously we've been doing pre-season predictions. You've been filling in the blanks. I've got the table over here, and you've been filling them in, haven't you? So what are you backing for Ceara? You said that you don't see them coming up. What kind of position are you talking there?
Yeah, there's not really much more to add, James. Like you said, we covered them in a bit more detail. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at all of the 4 promoted sides. So, like I said, if anybody wants any more detail, worth just going back and looking and listening to that episode. But yeah, like you said, interesting to see the dynamic between Fortaleza and Ceara. Obviously, they'll share the stadium. Can Ceara, bounce off Fortaleza's brilliant home record and end up, getting that themselves? I don't personally think so. The team's not as good. Obviously, I think Fortaleza, for what it's worth, I don't think they will quite be as sparkling as they were last season either. But Ceara, I'm going to go with 19th position, James. I don't think they'll be rock bottom, but I don't think they'll be able to, get the goals and keep them out to be able to stay up. No.
Yeah, fair enough. 19th position. We'll see. They do have a big reputation in Brazil, or at least in that kind of area of the country. So they'll certainly be, playing for pride at the very least, and trying to put themselves back up there. And Conde, like we said in a couple of weeks ago, I think deserves a little bit of luck after what kind of went on at Vitória last season. But let's move on, George, because we do want to get stuck into, I think, the other 3 sides really in this edition, because the 3 kind of exciting sides, really 3 sides who will be hoping for pushing towards the top of the table, I would say. So you're going to take on Corinthians, aren't you, George? And Corinthians, I mean, no club ended this 2024 season better than Corinthians. They were absolutely flying at the end of the year. I think it was 8 in a row, was it? They won. It might have even been 9 in the end under Ramon Diaz, but they were just unstoppable. Shot right up the table, ended up finishing in the Copa Libertadores qualification places, and I believe they've now qualified for the competition proper. Is that your understanding?
Well, that is pure fact, James. Yes, I mean they did go 9 unbeaten at the end of last season. They had a fantastic run of form, didn't they? 10 unbeaten in all. They finished the season with 9 wins out of 10, basically 10 unbeaten. Fantastic form, Memphis Depay, Yuri Alberto were both on sparkling form, weren't they, for them? And the manager Ramon Diaz, who was obviously sacked by Vasco in April. He came in July, didn't have the bounce really that you might have thought he might have done, and then but it really came good towards the end of the year, and they ended up finishing in a fantastic position based on what they were looking like finishing for most of the season. And they have it is a fact, James. They have now qualified for the Libertadores. They beat Venezuelan side Universidad Central over 2 legs. It was 4-3. It was a close game, 1-1 in Venezuela in the first leg, and then they did beat them 3-2, 4-3, like I said, on aggregate, courtesy of a Yuri Alberto double. An 89th minute winner, James, put them into the Libertadores. So it'll be interesting to see how they do get on in the Lib this coming season. Let's see, but it's exciting. It's an exciting side, definitely. I know you're quite excited to see how they get on, aren't you, this time round? They haven't done much business, it has to be said. Kaká, I don't know if you remember him. He played on loan with Corinthians last season.
Kaká.
Yeah, he scored an own goal at one stage, didn't he, Kaká?
I think he scored. Yeah. I think he scored 2 in 2 weeks or something, or 3.
Yeah, he did have a bit of a crazy. Yeah, he did have a bit of a crazy record, didn't he? He was on loan from Japanese side Tokushima Vortis. So he's signed permanently now for them for a value of 2.3 million. So it was quite an expensive transfer, that, really, if you look at it. And also Hugo Nogueira, the goalkeeper, He's signed from Flamengo as well, but that was just late last year, just after Christmas. But obviously, the season hasn't yet started. So, yeah, only those two have come in, James. There's been a couple of out, like you said, like you just mentioned, Pedro Raul and Pedro Henrique, both to Ceara. But other than that, it's very minimal, the kind of damage in terms of players gone out. So it's a very similar squad. Obviously, Ramon Diaz will get his, you'd have thought, a full season at it. Interesting to see how the Libertadores sort of, how they manage having the Lib and the Ceara, the Brazil around, how they, there's loads of games there to contend with. Is the squad big enough? It looks like they've tied, Memphis Depay. Doesn't look like he's going anywhere soon. I know his contract runs, I think, till, is it next summer, I think.
I think he's got longer. I think we had a look. I think he's actually, it might be the whole of this year, like the Brazilian season.
Yeah,
but I feel like it might be longer. I feel like he might be actually tied up until the end of 2026.
All right, because I wasn't sure if because I wasn't sure if it was the summer of 2026, but I'm not sure. But
yeah, he's right. It's December 31st, 2026. So he's got all this season, all next season.
So he's got 2 seasons remaining, which is really, if they can keep hold of him, which obviously is not going anywhere anytime soon. So, if he can really fire them in and get them performing as he was towards the end of last season, and Yuri Alberto is looking like he's staying. I mean, Depay got an assist last night. Like I said, Alberto got 2. They've got the likes of Rodrigo Garo, who ended the season in incredible form as well. Andre Carrillo also, he was a sort of a mid-season signing as well. He's, he might be one to watch in an experienced Peruvian sort of defensive player, but he's, certainly can add to the quality in this side as well. So, they've got the quality there that this division requires. I'd say Memphis Depay is definitely one to watch, and it's great to see, James. We're getting some real. Obviously, he was there end of last season, but we're getting some real big names in this Serie A now in the season coming on. I don't know when the transfer window ends actually, but it's they are looking like.
I think the international one ends. I think on Friday,
right.
Tomorrow. So I think so. From what I can tell, but that might be international transfers in terms of buying and selling players from abroad. I think the Brazilian market will probably be open longer, but I'm not 100% sure. It's a little bit tricky to tell. But like you said, Memphis is obviously not going anywhere. He's, he'd obviously be looking for a transfer back to Europe. Really, if he was going to be on the move, I don't see why he would be moving from Corinthians to another Brazilian club. To be fair, I think he would be looking to go back to Europe as and when he does leave. So obviously he can't do that for a few months at the very least. So they've got to make the most of him while they've got him. I would suggest, I can't see him seeing out that contract, but at the same time, who's gonna pay a fee really to go and get Memphis Depay from Corinthians in the kind of form he is with the contract length he has? He's not going to be cheap, so I'd imagine he's going to be there for the long haul. And like you said, he's one of the better players in this division by a mile. He could be the best. In if Neymar can't quite get up to speed, Depay is still only 30, isn't he? He's not an old player, and he's, as we saw last season, he can make a huge difference to this team.
Yeah, well, he's just passed his 31st birthday, actually, James. A couple of weeks ago, 13th of February, he turned 31. So, still not an old player, like you said, and particularly for the Brazilian, we know they like their older players. You can play up until your late 30s, can't you, in the Brazilian league at the top level. So, he's got plenty of time to go. Like you said, I don't know who from Europeans' top divisions would say, hey, you know what, we're going to go out and spend loads of money on Memphis Depay. I don't know who's got that kind of money to go and do that, because he'll be paid a lot of money at Corinthians. He's probably enjoying it. He's one of the, like I said, one of the best, if not the best player in this whole division. So, I'm sure he's lapping it up, he's loading it up, and he's probably enjoying the fact that he's probably got used to the lifestyle now. He's been there since September. So, and he's getting there on the pitch as well. He's one goal and 2 assists in the Paulista this season. I think they only play one more game before the season starts now. I think they're playing Mirassol, potentially Corinthians, in the last game of that particular competition. So let's wait and see what happens and how they then start the season. They're starting the season with a trip to Bahia, who coincidentally they did also qualify for the Libertadores for this coming year, James, as well. It was a 3-0 success over the strongest. So Bahia were the strongest team in that leg, not the strongest. So they won. I think it was 4-1. On aggregate after a 1-1 draw in the first leg. So they opened it with an away game at Bahia. Vasco. Then the first home game is Vasco on the 6th of April.
Very good. Well, I do want to fact check you, unfortunately, George. You did say it was a fact that they qualified for the Copa Libertadores. It is unfortunately not a fact yet. There's still a final round of qualification for both Corinthians and Bahia, actually. So Bahia, Corinthians are playing SC Barcelona, the Ecuadorian team.
Oh, okay.
Bahia, I think it's Boston River. Let me just double check.
Where are they from then?
I think they're from, they're Uruguayan side.
Oh, right.
No, it's not Boston River. It is. Oh, I don't know, George. But the fixtures are already set. I just had a quick look. There's a knockout round. There's only 3 teams left in the knockout round. I had it a minute ago. Right. I can't find it now anyway. But so they're not actually qualified just yet. I don't know I don't know what the state is, whether they actually go into the Sudamericana if they get knocked out in that round, or whether they just fall out completely. I'm not sure. Sorry, they are playing Boston River, Uruguayan team. So those games are next week with the Champions League games on that Wednesday, and then the following week is the second leg. So we'll have to wait and see. Just into Corinthians, you'll probably back them against Barcelona, the Ecuadorian team. But here, who knows? I mean, Boston River, I'm not sure. I don't think they're probably particularly. They're not a big side in South America, even in Uruguay. So you'd probably back Bahia for that as well. But just slow your horses on that one.
Yeah, well, thank you, James, for for getting correcting me on that one, because I wasn't. I thought I'd read it wrong. I'd read it like the all qualified, but I think obviously I got my facts wrong. So there we go. I don't get everything right, and that was certainly something that I didn't get right. But there you go. I know that for
some reason there's 3 fixtures, so there's only 6 teams that can qualify. There's 3 of them will qualify. 3 of them obviously won't. So I guess then it's the group stage after that. But it's like Champions League. I guess that's the 3rd qualifying round. That was the 2nd one, and then there's just the last qualifying round. So still not quite there, but I'm sure they'll get there anyway.
Yeah, well, there you go. So we'll wait and see how they get on anyway. But I think in the league, as terms of where the Brasileirão is concerned, I think they'll be sort of knocking in on the door of the Libertadores qualification, maybe on the outskirts of it. I'm going to go with. I mean, you're going to have to remind me what positions I've got left remaining, James, at some stage. If I say position one, I've already assigned a team to, but I'm going to go.
I'm not going to do. You just pick what you think, and I'll tell you if there's a team.
Well, that's what I'm going to do. That's exactly what I mean. So I'm going to put Corinthians in exactly the same position as they finished last season. I think they'll be 7th. I don't think they'll quite bridge it. I think the individual quality of Yuri Alberto and Memphis Depay will take them a long way, but it can only take them so far. I think the quality of other teams are much more refined, actually, and I think individual quality won't be enough to take them, as further up, particularly if they've got the Libertadores, and obviously it depends on the quality, the aspirations for the cup as well, so there's a lot of games, and whether they can sustain it, I'm not so sure. So 7th is probably a fair finish, I would have said.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be too disappointed with that, given that last season they were, in relegation form for a lot of the season, and they just managed to pull themselves up with that astonishing run, really, at the end of the season. So a steady 7th place, and maybe, like you said, a cup run would probably do them pretty well. Okay, George, let's 2 teams down. Let's bring back the Talking Brazil ball band and have a little break, and then we'll get into Cruzeiro and Flamengo. Welcome back, everybody, to Talking Brazil Ball. Fantastic, the Talking Brazil Ball band. Let's get into the next two teams then, George. So Cruzeiro are one of the teams who we haven't looked at just yet, of course. So there's been quite a lot going on at Cruzeiro, I have to say. As you mentioned at the top of the show there, Leonardo Jardim has come in as the new manager, a really interesting appointment on quite a few levels, really. He's never managed in Brazil before. He's managed in some lesser leagues, let's say, George, put it kindly. He's been, I don't know what happened to him, to be quite honest. He was the hottest property in Europe for a time at Monaco. I mean, that Monaco team were absolutely unbelievable. I mean, you go through man for man in that team, it was filled with quality. They won the Liga, you know, at a time when PSG were absolutely dominating. They got to, I think, the Champions League semi-final in the end, wasn't it? They beat Man City in an absolute goal fest along the way. Kylian Mbappe was up, was coming through. You know, Jardim was the manager who brought him, gave him his chance in the first team. Fabinho was there, Bernardo Silva, Thomas Lemar. It was just a fantastic team from top to bottom. And Jardim was praised as a manager who really was, you know, the fulcrum of it. But he could have had any job he wanted at one point, but George, like so many of these Portuguese and Brazilian coaches, he ended up in the Middle East. So he was bouncing around Qatar, UAE. He was at Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia. And yeah, he's come back to, you know, a bigger league really from where he's been and taken on a really big club. So it's kind of a gamble from his point of view, maybe a little bit of a gamble from Cruzeiro's point of view. But I haven't had a chance to get your thoughts on this appointment since it was announced. Obviously, we'll be looking at Cruzeiro in plenty of detail as the season goes on. But yeah, your reaction, because obviously, you know, Fernando Diniz ended the season with him. He ended it incredibly poorly. They lost in the Sudamerica final, which it felt like he was kind of brought in to help them win. I'm not sure quite what went on, to be honest, but Diniz is out of a job. Do you think this is a good appointment, or do you, like me, think it's perhaps a little bit of a gamble and one which could backfire quite quickly?
Yeah. I mean, look, Fernando Diniz was. I think they felt sure, like you said, James, he was going to bring home the Sudamericana for them. It obviously didn't happen, and he just tanked it basically from when he came in. They were on a horrific run of form, and obviously his sort of magic seems to have disappeared a little bit in the Brasileirão. And like I said, he's without a job. I don't know. I kind of disagree with you slightly, but you know, in the point that I do understand that it is a little bit of a gamble, where he has been sort of hiding in the Middle East, and like you said, it seems to be like a sort of a quite an attractive option for these, you know, Portugal. We've seen obviously Arthur Jorge go there, you know, recently, you know, looked, you know, for some, you know, who knows why he's packed in the job at Fogo after that double win, you know, would have seen, you know, in many people's eyes would have seen, you know, the more comfortable and better option to stay with Fogo and see if he could replicate it. So I don't understand. Well, I do understand what the pull is there, but not you know, it wouldn't be everybody's cup of tea. But obviously, Jardim seems to have enjoyed it. But you know, for me, it's almost on the Heart of Jorge sort of levels, really, of like, again, what Fogo did last season. It was a little bit of a gamble, but in the end, it came out really, really good. And I think, you know, this could do as well for Cruzeiro. I think they've recruited incredibly well for, you know, for where they're at, and I think they've got some decent players that can cause issues for the teams that up the higher end of this division. And with his quality, which he obviously does have, like you said, he won the Liga with Monaco at a time when PSG were absolutely dominating, as they always seem to do, and he bridged that gap and he won them the title. All those players that he had at his disposal, obviously Kylian Mbappe was a big part of it. But, you know, he is obviously clearly a talented coach. And I think it's a really, really interesting and a bit of a smart appointment, really, from Cruzeiro. It would have, again, been a lot of money to bring him in. He wouldn't have been cheap at all. He'd have demanded quite a bit of money. So, you know, Cruzeiro seemed to be able to haul in these big-name kind of managerial appointments, and you know, let's hope he does better than Diniz did, really.
Yeah, they seem to have quite a bit of money behind them, Cruzeiro, really. They seem to be able to spend a reasonable amount of money. you say the recruitment has been on point. I mean, it remains to be seen, really. But on paper, like Fabrizio Bruno from Flamengo, he was the big signing, really, about €7 million. He's Brazil international, obviously pretty experienced, not a young player, but he started off at Cruzeiro actually, so he's back home, which is quite a nice story, really. The centre back, so he's certainly a good signing. Obviously, we know they've got Cassio already, having signed last season, so that's an experience and quality kind of spine at the back. Really, they've got Fania as well, who spent an absolute age at Corinthians, legendary right back. So another one I think was a Brazil international too. So there's plenty of experience in that back line, and then you move forward through the kind of the attack, and Gabigol is another outstanding signing, George, who started particularly well, to be fair. At them, he's got 4 goals in 8 games, I think already. 5 goals in 7 in those kind of early season games before the Brasileirão kicks off. So he's hit the ground running, knows where the back of the net is. If they can get his attitude kind of sorted out and Hardim can get his arm around him a bit, then he could be a bit of a talisman, really. We know he's got the quality. We know how good he can be at this level. So if they can get him going, then I don't see why he can't kind of fire them up the table. And then our friend George, who never got back to us, of course, I was going to say friend of the show, but, you know, we're on kind of frosty terms, aren't we, with Yannick Bolasie? But you know what? I was really pleased to see this move. I mean, how well did he do at Criciúma last season in a struggling team? I know his goals came in fits and starts, but he did score a good amount. He was a key player for them in a team that was finding it difficult. Obviously, he went out on the Brazilian adventure. Bit of a gamble, joined a team who had just been promoted, and obviously caught the eye of Cruzeiro. And now he's at a really, you know, a good club in Brazil, and he's hit the ground running as well for them. He's done well in the start of those early season games. 3 goals in 10 appearances already for Yannick. So, yeah, I know you're a fan of Bolasie, aren't you, George? And what did you think about that? Because to me, it looked like I was pleased for him. I thought it was a nice story.
Yeah, I'm the same as you, James. Delighted for him. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's funny to see where he started. Where obviously, I think he was like, you know, it's an interesting story. He was a painter and decorator, I think, and you know, here in England, and then he's made his way through the EFL and then the Premier League, and then, you know, now he was at Swansea, wasn't he? The end of sort of towards the end of last season. Now he went to Criciúma, did well for them, 8 goals in a struggling side. Like you said, I don't think he would have scored in many games. I think he actually probably only scored in like 4 games, because he did seem to score 2 apiece every single time. You know, seeing as I remember it. But yeah, great move for him. Cruzeiro, like I said, really solid Brazilian side. And you know, I think they can hang their hats on him, as well as Gabigol, Mr. Barbosa, who, like you said, if he can get it right, he's a real threat at this level. And along with Bolasie, you know, that's what I mean. They've recruited well, and there could be a real trouble. You know, along with Hardim's, you know, under his sort of leadership, there could be a real problem for a lot of teams now this season. So yeah, I won't count them out at all. Like you said, at the back, you know, they've done some good business and already added to what they already had, which was good quality. So I'm expecting kind of decent things from them this season, actually, James, I must say. Also, they've kept Pereira, which was up until this point. Obviously, his move to Zenit fell through. So, you know, it remains to be seen whether he goes in the summer to when the sort of European market opens back up. But for the moment, he's still in Brazil. He's still in Cruzeiro. It's a big sort of hold for them now, for Cruzeiro's point of view. So hopefully, you know, he can bang in the goals as well for them. It's a bit of a throwback, you know, Pereira and Bolasie in the same team, you know, sort of EFL legends almost, in a sense. So yeah, interesting to see how they get on. Yeah,
Pereira, I was going to bring up, I mean, they have done good business. They bought Marquinhos in on loan from Arsenal, who had a bit of a poor time at flu last year as well. But he's another option for them. But I'd suggest he was maybe, or at least one of them was probably brought in with the anticipation that Pereira might be leaving. Like you said, George, in the end, he didn't. He didn't join Zenit, and that was seemingly to do with personal terms. He couldn't agree on the move, and it fell apart at the last. Unfortunately, there has been some unsavoury scenes, George, with Mateus Pereira. There's been some Brazilian clubs interested in him, apparently, but he, as we spoke about when we touched on this last week, he made it clear that he wanted to leave Brazil. So I think Botafogo, Palmeiras, I think there was another club who were interested as well, but he's made it clear he doesn't want to leave there, so he will be staying there. But Cruzeiro fans, George, haven't been happy. And the reason they haven't been happy, it seems, is because of results, actually, early on in Hardim's tenure. So they were in the semi-final of the Minas Gerais, which is the regional competitions, the Mineiro. And they were playing against America Mineiro, who are, of course, their rivals from Belo Horizonte, who are in Serie B. They did lose on penalties to them at this last weekend, just gone. So that was in the semi-final. So America are playing Galo, actually, in the final, which should be a good one. But Cruzeiro fans were not happy with this. And in retaliation to it, I think a couple of the fullbacks missed a penalty, Marlon and William. And along with Mateus Pereira, they have become real targets for the fans. So I think it was only a couple of days ago the fans hung like mannequins off a bridge in Belo Horizonte, dangling below a bridge over an overhang. So they chopped the heads off these mannequins. The mannequins were wearing shirts of each of the players with the names on the backs. The legs had been cut off and were also strung up next to the mannequins, and the shirts were kind of covered in a red kind of substance, which obviously wasn't blood, or hopefully wasn't blood, but was made to look like blood. So Pereira, the reasons for that are because of the transfer. It seems the other two players, I think, just missed penalties or played poorly in this two-legged semi-final, and so were targeted as well, William and Marlon. So yeah, George, I don't know if you saw that or what's your reaction to that. I mean, it's the kind of scenes we often praise Brazilian fans on this podcast for the passion that they show, but there is a dark side to it, and this is very much one of those times. There's no real need for that, is there?
I mean, there's no need for it at all, James. It's absolutely disgraceful, to be quite honest. I mean, people go to some lengths. I mean, look, he didn't kick the ball in the net, and then suddenly the sort of, they're doing that. It just seems, and they've gone to incredible lengths, to get the shirt, print the names on them, and then make these mannequins and to go to all this effort it doesn't. What does that achieve? It just doesn't achieve anything, does it? It's all negative. It's all, and look at the lads who miss them penalties. What are they meant to think? I mean, to me, I know they hang a lot of weight on these regional competitions because it is like local derbies all the time. It's wall-to-wall local derbies, isn't it? Really, but for me, surely the league is the bread and butter, and it hasn't even started yet. And you're giving out sort of that sort of energy. It really doesn't sit well with me, and it can't sit well. Obviously, with the players, they'll be absolutely probably devastated. I mean, Pereira looks like the kind of character who doesn't really give a toss, to be quite honest. And I think he'll just play, and then he'll just go in the summer, probably, won't he? And I'm interested to see where he goes. Me personally, if my team do get promoted, it would be one that I would actually like them to have a look at. Obviously, I've got absolutely no weight in it at all, but I would definitely like them to go in on Mateus Pereira. But I don't think he'll be too bothered. I don't know the other two lads. I don't know him, but he just doesn't seem like the kind of character to let that bother him. I don't know the other two lads, but yeah, disgusting scenes, really. It's not something that you want to see at all. And it just seems quite incredible. People would go to that sort of length to do that sort of thing, really. But
well, they take it very seriously. And they are city rivals, America. So, like you said, it is very much local rivals, local derbies, wall to wall. And yeah, Marlon, I saw that William, I think he's the right back, he was linked with Inter where he started off, but I don't think that's going to happen in the end. But anyway, yeah, I mean, like you said, it just all feeds into what should be a new start. The chance to kick on after what was a pretty decent season, really. Under Ceara, and then Diniz, and obviously didn't do particularly well, but still guided them to a decent finish. But to kick off in that manner doesn't really do anybody any favours, especially not the new coach. So with all that in mind, George, where are you placing Cruzeiro in your predicted table?
it's not, that doesn't feed into a great, a great sort of start for him, really. I mean, they kick off their campaign at home to newly promoted Mirasol. So that's kind of like quite a kind fixture to begin with, potentially for Cruzeiro and Hardim. Given all that unsavoury business, I don't think it'll ultimately hinder them in the long term in the league. I think they've got quality there. Like I said, I think Hardim's quality as a manager will shine through on this group of players as well. I'm going to put them sixth, James. I think they'll do all right.
Yeah, fair enough. That sounds good. And like you said, Pereira maybe won't let it bother him. And as soon as he scores a few goals, I'm sure the tide will turn in the stands as well. Cool. So
as it always does, James. As it always.
Well,
does.
yeah. I mean, I heard you saying there that you're amazed these lengths that some of them go to. I'm sure you've been on the verge of stringing up a Pascal Struijk mannequin times when he missed the penalty a few weeks ago. I think he'd have been hanging above the Kirks and the bridges in Kirks or something as a warning.
No, like I said, I don't think I go as far as that. It's who's got time to do all of that sort of thing? You know what I mean? It's crazy, but obviously, I mean, I give the boys stick, but who doesn't give them, their team players a bit of stick when they're not playing, when they're not performing. So, I've got nothing to complain about now. We're doing incredibly well, and another important game on Saturday. So, let's hope, nobody comes close to doing those sorts of scenes as far as Leeds are concerned.
No, absolutely. There's a line, and they have certainly crossed it.
Definitely.
In Belo Horizonte. Right, George, let's look at Flamengo then, our final club of the episode. We have touched on Flamengo previously. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we did the title challenges. And Flamengo is certainly that, aren't they? Looking good going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, Flamengo, we won't go into them too much, James. Like we said, if you want more information on Flamengo and how they started, then have a look at that show from a couple of weeks ago where we did look at title challenges. I think I'll say it now, James. I think Flamengo will win the league. Again, I tipped them last season to win it, but I think more serious this time. I think they will. I think Fogo are not, will struggle. I think Palmeiras, I think it'll be just a little bit too much for Abel Ferreira. Like I said before, I don't even think he'll see the season out. And I think Flamengo it's almost theirs to lose, really, James. They've not brought in many players. Juninho from Karabag and Danilo, the experienced defender who came in as a free agent. He just left Juventus in Italy, hasn't he? So he's a very good signing at centre-back. Or across the whole defence, he can play, can't he? So he's a very, very experienced player, which will help them incredibly. And I just think, I think just the Felipe Luis is very well liked by the club. He's very well liked by the players. He knows the group well, having played there recently, wasn't he? He played there. And he ended his career there. Ended his career in the end of 2023. So he knows this group of players. He was a youth player. He was a youth coach for them, wasn't he, before he became the main manager. So he'll, be able maybe to tap into the youth group, which is it's a good conveyor belt that they've got there, isn't it? They bring through some really talented young players, so maybe he can tap into that also. I don't think we did speak about a couple of weeks ago, Loren. The young lad Loren going, I'm not sure if he's gone yet still, James. I don't know if that transfer, it was going to Ukraine, I think, wasn't he? I don't think it's gone through potentially yet. There hasn't been anything much in terms of incomings and outgoings. It's very much the similar kind of group. And I just think they've got quality. They'll get Pedro back. As a couple of months into the season, which will be a massive boost. I think if he was fit the whole season, maybe they would have been a bit closer to Fogo in the end. I just think I can't see any way past Flamengo, if I'm quite honest.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout. I think Luis, like you said, he's a young coach and it's his first full season in charge, but he had enough of the last season and he won the Copa del Brasil. He also won the Super Copa against Botafogo. So he's had enough time to kind of settle in without it being a culture shock to him. And he seems to have the support of the players. I wanted to just highlight Wesley, the right back, who Liverpool have been linked with over the past couple of weeks, and Man United as well. So he's probably one to watch. Seems like he's garnering attention from some of Europe's big hitters. He's only 21. He's a regular starter for Flamengo. Felipe Luis was raving about him after the Super Copa win against Botafogo a couple of weeks back. So he's one to watch, isn't he, George? They've got other players, like you said, Pedro, coming back in if they can kind of maintain a good position up until his. I mean, you can't expect loads off him straight away, but, he's one of the league's better goal scorers, isn't he? And again, they might have had one eye on perhaps losing him if he'd have been fit all last season, but obviously that's not going to happen. Maybe you can get ready for the summer and somebody might come in, but I think they'll probably bank on having him for the whole season, and that can make a big difference as well. So, yeah, Flamengo, I think they're going to capitalise a little bit on, like you said, Palmeiras looking a little bit off it. Chaos at Fogo, who knows what's going to be going on really there. And then there's a pack of clubs behind them who could really challenge. But yeah, they for me, I don't know what the bookies are saying. I don't know if the odds are out just yet, but they have to be one of the favourites. They do have a bit of a tricky start, George. They've got Inter at home at the Maracanã on the first day, so that's not a a kind start for them, but it'll be one where they'll feel like they can get the win at home. And if they can get the win in that one, they'll feel like they're setting off on exactly the right foot. So we're putting Flamengo in right at the top of your table there.
Yeah, I think so, James. Like you said, there could be teams that we haven't thought of yet that come and challenge them. Maybe our predictions aren't completely, go completely off the wall, which they could do. That's what they are, predictions. So anything could happen. But I do believe that Flamengo have probably the best sort of opportunity to win this. They want more from, I said it before a couple of weeks ago, James, they want more from the likes of Nicolas de la Cruz and Georgian de Ariceta as well. They want more from those Uruguayan lads. Also, Pedro's massive, though, from coming back. Also, Gonzalo Plata, the young Ecuadorian lad, might have a little bit more of a say this season as well. So, yeah, like I said, there's players coming back. Bruno Henrique as well. The forward might have a bit of a say in this season also. So they've got the well stacked, the well ready for it. I would have said, the fact that they didn't have to do much business in the transfer market is, says a story as well. So let's wait and see. But yeah, they're definitely my tip for the title this time.
Fantastic. I don't necessarily disagree. So, George, that's the 4 teams covered, 4 more on the board. So we've now covered 8. So we're starting to get there a little bit. We've got 4 more to do next week. So next week we are going to be looking at Fluminense, Fortaleza, Grêmio, and Inter. So the 2 big Porto Alegre rivals. And then Flu and Fortaleza as well. Obviously, Flu hoping for a much better season. Fortaleza hoping to maintain what they did last year and possibly go even better. So I'd quite like to look at Inter. So perhaps you want to do Flu and Grêmio, and I'll do Fortaleza and Inter. How does that sound?
Yeah, it sounds fine to me, James. Absolutely fine. I know you'll want to look at your boys again in more detail again. So, yeah, like you said, tricky start for them away at Flamengo, but I'm sure they won't fear anybody with Supermercado and the way that they finished last time out. So, yeah, bring that game on. That's a good-looking match to begin with.
Certainly is. Could be an early contender for Game of the Week. We'll have to wait and see on that one. So, about 3 preview shows still to go, George, and that should just about take us up to the day, won't it? I think, although we might have to do one more episode on something, but we're getting there, slowly getting through it. Excitement ramping up. Any last thoughts ahead of saying goodbye?
Yeah, no, James. It's another one done, isn't it? Like you said, we've got 3 more to look at through the teams. What is that? 12 more teams to have a look at. And then, like you said, we'll maybe have 1 week where we've got to fill and think of something to do. But, I'm sure, it's all good. We're looking forward to it. There's just over a month now then till it kicks off. And once it kicks off, it's fabulous fun, isn't it? Like you said, I think there's two, I think we already know from those fixtures what is going to be the opening 2 games of the week. I don't think we can really pick any other ones out. But, let's wait and see what happens close to the day. But yeah, excitement building. Let's see what happens from now and next week, where we'll look at those 4 teams. Absolutely, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's the 4 teams actually who we picked out the other week as the title challengers, isn't it? It's Palmeiras against Fogo and Flamengo against Inter. So yeah. Early chances to lay down a marker for all of those sides. Preparations continue. The local competitions carry on, and as does the Sudamericana, Libertadores. So lots to get stuck into. Until next week, everybody, thank you very much for listening, and adios.
Adios.
Talking Brazil ball, we're breaking it down. Bringing the passion from every town. Let the world be filled with love tonight. Sway to the beat.